the inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
When Marilyn Zayas walked onto the bench of the Ohio First Court of Appeals in downtown Cincinnati on the morning of March the 6th, she made history. Elected last November, Judge Zayas became the first Latina to preside over an appeals court in the state of Ohio. Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. I'm Dan Hurley. Although Cincinnati is a slow growth region and cautious about embracing change, signs keep popping up that our region is becoming more diverse and has the opportunity to become more inclusive. The second part of the show will focus on the impact of the expanding Asian American community. But we begin with the development in a governmental area. Last November, Hamilton County voters gave Marilyn Zayas, I'm having trouble now, Judge Z, a 50.6% majority over her incumbent judge and opponent, Peter Stoutberg. But here is the challenge. Most voters have very little idea what state appeals courts do and how they function. Most lawyers, in fact, never appear before an appeals court. To help explore those questions, I'm joined this morning by Judge Marilyn Zayas. In 2000, after graduating from the University of Cincinnati College of Law, the judge founded a private practice law firm. Like most lawyers in private practice, she provided a broad range of services from business, labor, and employment law to juvenile and family law and family immigration law. In the last 17 years, she has appeared before courts at every level and also was a regular on Local 12 when we had a weekly Spanish language news report. Welcome back.
Thank
to
you.
Channel 12, and welcome back to Newsmakers, because you would also come over here.
Yes.
And
so excited to be here.
And congratulations on your victory last November. Let's begin with a little background. I didn't want to go into that. So you're Latina, you're Puerto Rican, your parents are Puerto Rican. Tell us a little bit about your personal stories. Were you born in Puerto Rico? Were you born in New York? Where were you born? Well,
my parents migrated from the Caribbean island of Puerto Rico in the 50s to the island of New York City. and they met there, married, and had their 4 children. I'm the only girl with 3 brothers.
Where do you fit in?
I was the youngest until 10 years later when my mom had my younger brother. So
okay.
And I'm the only one that actually left New York City. I grew up in Washington Heights, and Washington Heights took on a very large transformation when I was there. When we moved in, it was a working class neighborhood, and it transitioned very quickly in the 70s because of the heroin epidemic of the 70s. And it was just a neighborhood that was just riddled with drugs and crime and different issues. And, you know, growing up in that sort of environment, you know, there were many times that, you know, that I was treated as if there wasn't much expected from me. And I always
Did you go to public schools?
I went to public schools, and I had a lot of great teachers. And I always felt like I was blessed because we had a balcony in my apartment, and I used to escape to my balcony because, and this is a fact that came out very recently, and I was surprised people's reactions. I never owned a bicycle growing up. So my escape was the balcony. I would go out there and play on the cement floor and pretend the floor was grass and play with my Barbies. And there was very simple dreams I had. I wanted to get out of New York. I wanted to go to college, and I didn't really know what college was. I just knew that that was my way out, and I wanted to own a home someday. And that's really what brought me here. So I did go to college. I used to commute 4 hours a day on the subway to go to college.
Where did you go?
At the time we lived in Brooklyn, and I went to City College of New York, which is in Harlem.
Right.
And it was literally a 2-hour commute to the university and 2-hour commute back home every day until I got my degree.
And your degree is in computer science,
It's in computer science. I started as an electrical engineering major and then transitioned to computer science. And that's how I came here. I was recruited by Procter & Gamble. So I'm very grateful to Procter & Gamble to bring me to what is my home, Cincinnati. And I came in '88 to work as an IT manager at Procter & Gamble.
And why the shift to law? What prompted you to say, now I'm at Procter & Gamble, and that can be a real career path.
Yes.
Lots of support, lots of reinforcement.
Yes.
Good situation to work in. Why did you make the decision?
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed working for Procter & Gamble, but what led me to law school were experiences that I had pre-Procter & Gamble. A part of it was growing up in the environment that I did. Also, when I was 19 years old, my parents went through a divorce, and I would go to court with them. And I got to experience the court system personally and the justice system personally, and that kind of developed a zeal in me of like, gosh, I would like to be part of that because I believe that I can make a difference. But I was very fortunate because everything went very well for me. And literally, when I was pregnant with my third child, at that point, it was like the realization of like, you know, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. So when I had my third child and I took my maternity leave, I did my applications and I wound up taking admission into UC Law rather than going back to Procter & Gamble.
Okay. You then went into private practice. And for people who aren't in the field, private practice is a very conscious decision. I mean, I'm sure you, given your background, might have had opportunities with one of the larger firms, a Taft or
Well, I
Dinsmore.
started with a big firm. I actually,
You did.
my first position, I was recruited and I went to work in Denver. And I worked for the biggest firm in Colorado called Holland & Hart, and I was an intellectual property attorney.
Okay. But then you came back.
And then I came back.
What does it mean in terms of now being on the bench, the fact that you were in private practice? What do you think you bring to that?
Well, I worked for a huge firm. I was also in the public sector because I worked for the Public Defender's Office. And I worked for myself working in private practice. So I was literally a business owner, right? So all of those experiences is what I'm bringing to the bench. Because what's important, when people go to court, they want to be heard. People can feel finality if they feel that they have been heard. And they can accept, most people will be able to accept the outcome, even if it doesn't go their way, if they feel that they can be heard. So what I bring to the court is, given my personal experiences and given my professional experiences, is a zeal to serve and a zeal to ensure that everything is reviewed thoroughly and that everything is being considered. Because the Court of Appeals is the court to catch the mistakes and to correct them. And so in order to catch and correct those mistakes, everything has to be thoroughly considered.
You know, most people, the vast majority of people, have never been inside the Court of Appeals.
That's correct.
Most lawyers, and I know this from Leadership Cincinnati, when we would take people to the Court of Appeals, lawyer after lawyer would tell me, who were in the class, oh, I've never been in the Court of Appeals before. What's the difference between what most people either have experienced in municipal or common pleas court, or what we've seen on TV, and appeals court?
Absolutely. Well, in the trial court, that's where the initial decisions are taking place. Decisions including what evidence will be submitted in addition to the outcome of the case itself. All right? And those decisions, some of those decisions are decided purely by the judge, and some of those decisions could be decided by the judge or by a jury. That's where the witnesses come forward and they testify. When you go to the Court of Appeals, it's a court of review. So you're reviewing what it is that occurred previously. So it's very important what did occur previously and what's on the record, because we're limited to what's on the record. So if it wasn't presented in the court, we cannot consider it. And we're also limited many times, oftentimes we're also limited to the arguments that were brought forward by the attorneys at the court, and also limited oftentimes
so you're not retrying the case.
We're not retrying the case. We are reviewing the case, and we are there to review the case and to make a determination whether something went wrong.
As I looked, did a little research, courts of appeals are, for the vast majority of the cases, about 97%, they're the last court that they can go to. The Ohio Supreme Court takes very few cases because they have to be ones that need to be, they're resolving conflicts between various appeals courts in different districts. So this is the court of last appeal
Yes.
for most people. So what do you do when you make a decision in this situation? What's involved that may be different than a trial court?
Yeah. Well, every case that determines that they want to appeal, if they properly follow the procedure, they will have a right to review within the appellate court. But for the Ohio Supreme Court, you have to establish jurisdiction. So very few cases will be able to establish jurisdiction and will be heard by the Supreme Court. So when we review a case, I am literally reviewing the transcript, everything that was said, every piece of evidence that was submitted, in addition to the laws that govern that case. We are literally reviewing absolutely everything. And in addition to that, the attorneys have an opportunity to come to the court and argue their case. So each attorney will come in, and certainly one side is arguing, these are the errors that need to be corrected, and the other side is arguing, no, there were no errors, there's nothing that needs to be corrected.
And this is one of these situations, as I've observed the court before you sat on it, I've probably been there 8 or 9 times, it's the appeals court model where the attorney could come in and start an argument, and one of the judges on the bench can interrupt at any point
Absolutely.
and ask a question.
Absolutely.
So it's not like, say your piece and then we'll ask you questions. It's just the questions flow,
Absolutely.
they interrupt the train of thought.
Yes.
It's really an interesting process.
And it's actually the funnest part, and it's not because we're interrupting to interrupt, it's because we already have reviewed, before I hear from the attorneys, I've reviewed everything, and I already have some questions in my mind that I want answered. And so this is the opportunity to inform the attorneys what those questions are, and to give them that opportunity to concisely and target their information to the areas that need to be addressed in order for me to be able to make a decision on the case.
Now, normally there are 3 judges sitting for each of those reviews.
That
is
is
that correct?
Yes.
I think in the video that we saw that morning, your first morning when you were on the bench and in the robes, there were just 2 judges there.
There was an emergency with one of the judges that morning.
Okay,
yes.
so normally there are 3.
There were 3 judges, yes.
What happens, okay, you've all sat there, you've asked your questions, you've read the material, you've heard the pleadings. What do you do then? What happens after that? How do you make a decision?
Well, after we hear from the attorneys, then we talk, we get together with our law clerks that were assigned the cases, and we talk about...
Oh, you talk with the law clerks?
Yes, and so we're all, and the reason we talk with the law clerks is because they also have reviewed the record. So now we have not only the judges, but we have our attorneys, and in cohesion, we're all working together, and and what did you see? What are your concerns? What needs to be researched more thoroughly? What have you found? What haven't you found? And so we're looking at everything. We're looking at everything from even jurisdiction. Are there any issues of jurisdiction? Do we actually have the authority over this case? Because every once in a while we do have cases that get appealed untimely, and they should not be before the Court of Appeals yet. They could be later, but they're not yet. So our analysis begins there and all the way goes through every single error as well.
And then when there's a decision among the judges, somebody gets assigned to write an opinion.
Yes.
This is different too,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And I don't know how you've been there.
My first case was January 30th. At this point, I've written a few dozen opinions.
A few dozen?
I've lost track.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to
I would say
crank those opinions
Yeah,
out.
definitely over a dozen for sure. But yeah, it's more than I can keep track of.
And what's the most surprising thing about, you ran for this, you wanted to be there, now you're on it.
Yeah.
What's the biggest surprise?
The biggest surprise is, you certainly don't know until you're doing it, whether you're going to enjoy it. And I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I enjoy it. I also I love learning new things, and so that has not been a challenge for me, because if you know how to learn, then you can learn anything. And so the fact that there's a variety of cases, because we cover everything from custody to divorces to people that have died, to car accidents. And so each case has its own novelty, and learning all of those novelties is actually exciting for me. So that's been really the biggest surprise, is like, oh yeah, I'm in the right place. I'm so excited that I'm in the right place.
A final question here. We started out with your background. The fact that you come from an immigrant family, how much is that, we've heard I've heard a little bit about how it informed what you wanted to do and what drove you early. How do you think that continues to be a factor in your life? Because this whole question for our society of who we are as Americans and the role of immigration, but for you, what's the ongoing role of that for you in your life?
See, for me, I see myself in everyone. It's really interesting because I relate to everyone. The human experience is sort of a thread that ties us all together. And so, you know, because I was on the outside looking in. I was one of those people that, you know, with my face pressed against the glass on the outside looking in. And now that I'm on the inside, it's really in some ways no different, because the humanity of us is all the same. We all want the same stuff. You know, we all want to be in a safe community. We want our kids to prosper. We want our businesses to prosper. We want to feel like we're connected to the community. And so for me, having the experience of being from the outside in, it gives me more zeal when I'm, you know, being now on the inside. And I also, for me, it's very important that as many people as possible feel connected to the community, regardless of where they come from. Because when I look at my first, it's like, look, there was the first woman, the first African American, there was the first Jewish person, there was the first Irish, there was the first Italian. And you know what's funny about that? There's very few Latinos in Hamilton County.
Right.
When there was the first Irish and the first Italian, I bet you they didn't get there because there were all these Italians that voted for them.
Right.
You know, it was really because of what they stood for and what they were bringing to the community.
Yeah, I always remind people that in 1860, 48% of the city of Cincinnati was foreign born. Today, it's about 3%, 3 or 4%.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Thank you for coming back to Newsmakers, and I hope you continue to enjoy, and thank you for continuing to be involved in this community. It's very, very important.
I'm honored to be here.
Stay tuned. Do you just love to cook or eat? Have you always wanted to figure out the differences between Cambodian and Japanese food? Stay tuned. After the break, the Asian Food Fest. This coming weekend, more than 30,000 people are expected to attend the Asian Food Fest in Washington Park. Founded in 2010 and run completely by volunteers, this year is the fest has partnered with the Cincinnati, USA Regional Chamber to expand and strengthen food options and the cultural experience. Welcome back. Nothing is more fundamental than food. For anthropologists and social scientists, foodways is one of the most critical places in a society where culture, tradition, and history intersect. One of the best ways to get to know people from other cultures is by eating their food and engaging in conversation during a meal. This coming Saturday and Sunday, Cincinnatians of all backgrounds are invited to Washington Park for the 8th annual Asian Food Fest. 31 restaurants and food trucks representing 13 different cultural traditions will offer an amazing array of taste in food and beer, as well as opportunities for cross-cultural learning beyond the curries, fried rice, and barbecue. And the goal is to help make Cincinnati more diverse, accepting, and a delicious city. I love that. I am joined this morning by Tessa Xuan, the marketing director of the Asian Food Fest. Ms. Xuan is the daughter of Chinese immigrant parents, and she was born in Lexington and graduated graduated from Ohio State. In January 2016, she was named the executive director of the Chinese Chamber. And then next to her is Xuan Lindquist, the owner of the Thai Express, and will be one of the restaurants that is participating and has brought all kinds of nice food. And Tom Fernandez, who is the director of the Minority Business Accelerator at the Cincinnati, USA Regional Chamber. Welcome to Newsmakers. This is one of those events that is wonderful. So Tessa, what is it that you really hope can be accomplished by partnering with the Chamber this year and sort of taking this to the next level?
Well, we're really excited to partner with the Chamber this year. When this festival first started, it was really like a small church festival, very grassroots, and it brought the community together, but I think there's an opportunity for us to make Asian Food Fest into one of the biggest major food festivals in Cincinnati, something that draws people from all over the country, that puts Cincinnati on the map.
Well, one of the amazing things is when I was reading the website, and Tom, you can, or Xuan, any of you can talk about this, is Asia is a very big and very diverse place. So it's not one kind of food, and there's all these different traditions. And I think Americans know a piece of this and a piece of that, but this is a place where you can sample a lot of different things, right? Tom, what's your background, just so people know?
My parents are from the Philippines, and so the food of the Philippines is delicious, and so my mom lives with us now, so every night we have some different Filipino dish, it seems, and so Asian Food Fest offers so many different traditions, so definitely come hungry.
And yes, come hungry. That's a very good point. And Thai Express has been around for a long time. Lots of people know the Thai Express. So how did you get in? How long have you been in the United States? How long have you been in this business?
I came in 1991 from Thailand. I married, and then I moved from Maryland to here on 1995. So I'm starting Thai Express 1997. And now 20 years.
So this is also a story of small businesses
Definitely.
really taking hold. That's the story of immigration. That people come, they're entrepreneurial in the modern business terms, and they start something and it just keeps growing. So you've got a lot of clientele. So these 31 different vendors who are going to be with you next weekend, what's the cross-section there? How did they get chosen?
Well, you're right. They're all small businesses, and most of them are family-owned, and they're families that have come here to pursue the American dream. The Asian Food Fest team, from the beginning, we've developed relationships with different Asian restaurants and businesses. So it started out just recruiting based on who we knew. We would go and eat in these people's restaurants, order from Thai Express, and it was through that relationship and trust building that vendors started to sign up year after year. So this is by far the most vendors we've ever had. We only had 19 last year, so it's a huge growth.
I'm aware of the time crunch, and I want to make sure. I haven't had a thing to eat today, so I want to see what's Xuan? What's the dish that you've brought for us this morning?
This is called Penang curry.
Okay.
It's kind of like rich on the flavor, and it's kind of come from the southern part of Thailand.
Okay.
But since I start working with my mom little, so I just
Now,
create the
how
dish
hot
that
is this going to be? I've got a little mild Irish mouth here.
Not too hot. It's
Not too
just,
hot. Okay.
No, not too bad.
It's
So-
just perfect.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you're dishing that up and passing it out, Tessa, what's the larger? I mentioned that larger mission statement, but what do you hope people will do when they come besides buying the food, sampling the food? What do you hope happens?
I hope that they really make this part of their Mother's Day weekend plans and plan to stick around, because there's more than just the food. We're going to have different cultural performances from local performing groups. So you'll get traditional Chinese dances, you'll get martial arts, Filipino cultural performances, Japanese chorus. So
Okay.
there's tons of entertainment, and then activities for families. So on Sunday, there will actually be a roof shoot, which is this parachute that travels across the country, and it'll be fun for the whole family.
Okay, I have to make sure people know what they're doing here. The Asian Food Fest will be held May 13th and 14th, pardon me, I'm eating and enjoying it, in the Washington Park and Over the Rhine. It'll be open both days from noon till 9 at night. And to find out more, check out the website at asianfoodfest.org. What a great opportunity to expand your palate and your cultural competence at the same time. What I'm hoping is people will come and talk with everybody who comes. So thank you very much for doing this. Thank you for being here this morning. And let's pray for good weather.
That's right.
For the weekend.
Thank
you for making
Thank
Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week to meet the women and the men working to expand the cultural spectrum of the Cincinnati region. Have a good week.